if you don't play now, you're not gonna play at all. You need to go on right now. And I'm like,
most guitarists chase speed. Carlos Santana chased spirit. His guitar did not speak. It sang prayers, whispered mysteries, called down forces older than rock and roll itself. But here is what the myth gets wrong. Santana was never trying to be a guitar hero. He was trying to be a channel, a bridge between worlds, between cultures, between the earthly and the divine. Long before Woodstock made him a legend, Santana was a kid in Tijuana, with his ear pressed to records that had no business being in the same room together. Jazz met blues. Latin rhythms crashed into African drums. Classical guitar wept beside electric distortion. He did not see borders. He saw possibilities. And every album that shaped him broke a rule someone said could not be broken. Santana never played for approval. He played for transcendence, for that moment when the music stops being sound and becomes an experience. These 7 albums taught him that lesson. They showed him that fusion was not a genre, it was a philosophy, that the guitar was not a tool for showing off. It was an instrument of healing, of connection, of love made audible. Hit subscribe if you are ready for this journey. Tell us in the comments which album you think unlocked Santana's sound. Let us begin where the spirit moved him first. 7. A Love Supreme, 1965. This was not a rock album, it was a prayer set to music. John Coltrane recorded A Love Supreme as an offering. A conversation with something higher, and Carlos Santana, barely out of his teens, heard it and understood immediately.
everything comes from God and everything returns to God. We are just like a host.
Music could be worshipped. The saxophone could be a voice speaking directly to God. And if Coltrane could do that with a horn, Santana could do it with 6 strings: acknowledgement, resolution, pursuance, psalm. These 4 movements were not songs in any traditional sense. They were a spiritual ascent. Coltrane was searching, crying out, surrendering. His saxophone did not play melodies. It channeled yearning. Santana listened with his whole body. He felt the urgency, the desperation to touch something beyond the physical world. What hit Santana hardest was Coltrane's commitment to the journey. This was not about entertainment. It was about transformation. Coltrane played like his life depended on reaching the other side. Santana wanted that same intensity, that same fearlessness and vulnerability. He later shared, "Coltrane taught me that music is a conversation with the infinite." Every note Santana plays carries that lesson. The sustained tones, the way he lets notes hang in the air like incense, the refusal to rush through moments that demand reverence. A Love Supreme was not an influence. It was an awakening. It taught Santana that the guitar could be an altar, and he has been making offerings ever since. 6. Sketches of Spain. 1960, Miles Davis took flamenco and reimagined it through jazz. Sketches of Spain was a collision of worlds that should not have worked. Spanish classical music meeting American cool jazz. Orchestras breathing alongside trumpet solos.
I was like, whoa, look at it, and you could hear,
Carlos Santana heard this album and realized fusion was not just possible, it was necessary. This was his birthright speaking. Mexican blood meeting American innovation. Davis showed him the path forward. Concierto de Aranjuez. The opening track alone stretched 20 minutes. Miles's trumpet did not compete with the orchestra. It danced with it, became part of something larger. Santana recognized this approach immediately. His own playing had always leaned toward collaboration over domination. Davis proved that restraint could be radical, that leaving space was its own form of power. What made Sketches of Spain revolutionary was its courage. Davis was at the peak of his jazz fame. He could have played it safe. Instead, he dove into Spanish tradition and emerged with something neither jazz nor classical, but somehow both. Santana saw himself in that boldness. A Mexican kid in San Francisco who loved blues but could not ignore the rhythms in his blood. Santana once said, "Miles gave me permission to honor where I came from." This album demolished the idea that you had to choose one identity. You could be many things at once. Sketches of Spain was not just music, it was liberation. The blueprint for everything Santana would build. 5. Gypsy 66, 1966. Most people have never heard of Gabor Szabo. That is their loss. The Hungarian jazz guitarist recorded Gypsy 66 and created something hypnotic. Something that moved between East and West without settling in either. Carlos Santana discovered this album during his early years in San Francisco, and it rewired his understanding of what the guitar could express. Szabo played with this floating modal quality, melodies that seemed to drift rather than march. Gypsy Queen, that track alone became part of Santana's DNA. He would later record his own version, but first, he studied Szabo's original obsessively, the way Szabo used space, the way his notes seemed to question rather than declare. There was mystery in every phrase. Nothing was spelled out, everything suggested. What captivated Santana was Szabo's cultural fluidity. Born in Hungary, trained in jazz, incorporating Eastern scales and gypsy traditions, Szabo refused to be boxed in. His guitar spoke multiple languages in a single solo. Santana, navigating his own identity between Mexican roots and American rock, found a kindred spirit. He reflected later, "Gabor showed me that you could wander without being lost." The guitar did not have to announce itself aggressively. It could seduce. It could float. It could suggest journeys without providing maps. Gypsy 66 taught Santana that subtlety had its own strength. That invitation was more powerful than assertion. That album became the template for Santana's own explorations into world music. 4. Electric Ladyland, 1968. Hendrix did not play guitar, he became it. Electric Ladyland was the sound of a man dissolving into his instrument and emerging as pure electricity. Carlos Santana heard this double album and felt both inspired and humbled. Hendrix had taken the guitar somewhere Santana never imagined, into outer space, into the subconscious, into dimensions that did not have names yet. Voodoo Child, All Along the Watchtower, Crosstown Traffic. Hendrix treated the studio like an alchemist's lab. Effects pedals became brushes. Feedback became texture. He painted with sound. Santana listened and realized that the guitar did not have to follow any template. Hendrix proved you could invent your own language entirely. But what struck Santana most was not the technical wizardry. It was the emotion underneath. Hendrix was not showing off. He was communicating something urgent, something desperate. Behind all the distortion and chaos was vulnerability, pain. Hendrix played like he was trying to break through to another realm. Santana understood that hunger. What Electric Ladyland taught Santana was possibility. The album demolished limits, showed that rock, blues, funk, psychedelia, they could all exist in the same space. That you could honor tradition while destroying it simultaneously. Santana later admitted, "Jimmy made me braver." After Electric Ladyland, Santana stopped worrying about whether his fusion experiments made sense. Hendrix had proven that following your instincts was the only rule that mattered. The album was not a blueprint. It was permission to explore without apology. 3. Tito Puente, 1958. The Heartbeat. That is what Tito Puente gave Santana. Dance Mania was pure Afro-Cuban fire. Timbales, congas, brass sections exploding in synchronized joy. This was not background music. This was a celebration of survival, rhythm as religion. And for Santana, who grew up surrounded by these sounds, Dance Mania was a reminder of who he was beneath the rock and roll. Ran Can Can, Hong Kong Mambo, Complicación. Puente's arrangements were mathematical in their precision, but loose in their execution. Everything was syncopated, layered, alive. Santana absorbed the polyrhythms, the way multiple percussion instruments could speak to each other in complex conversations. He wanted that same intricacy in rock music, that same depth of groove. What made Dance Mania essential was its refusal to simplify. This was not watered-down Latin music for American audiences. This was the real thing. Dense, sophisticated, demanding. Puente never apologized for the complexity. He celebrated it. Santana took that pride and carried it into his own music. He would not dilute his Latin influences to make rock fans comfortable. Santana once said, "Tito reminded me that rhythm is sacred. Not just a backdrop for solos, not just something to keep time. Rhythm was the foundation, the pulse, the connection to ancestry." Dance Mania taught Santana that rock and roll needed more than four-on-the-floor drums. It needed the complexity of his heritage. That album became the percussion backbone of everything Santana created. 2. Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac 1969. Before Fleetwood Mac became stadium pop, they were a blues band with teeth, and Peter Green was their quiet genius. Then Play On arrived in 1969 and displayed something Carlos Santana immediately recognized: emotion without ego. Green played the guitar like he was confessing sins, quietly, intimately, with a tone so pure it felt like it was coming from inside your own chest. Oh well. Rattlesnake shake. Like crying. Green's solos were economical. He did not waste notes. Every bend meant something. Every sustained note carried weight. Santana studied Green's phrasing obsessively. The way Green let notes breathe. The way he found melody in the smallest spaces. This was blues without bravado. Honest, unguarded. What separated Green from other British blues guitarists was his tone. Warm, round, almost vocal. He did not assault you with volume. He invited you closer, made you lean in. Santana wanted that same intimacy. That same ability to make the guitar speak in complete sentences with just a handful of words. Then Play On also showed Santana that you could be in a successful band and still maintain artistic integrity. Green was not chasing trends. He was following his muse even as it led him into increasingly experimental territory. Santana reflected, "Peter taught me that silence matters as much as sound." The spaces between notes gave them meaning. Green played with patience, with trust that less could say more. That album became Santana's guide for balancing technical ability with emotional honesty. 1. Abraxas 1970. Wait. His own album? Yes. Because Abraxas was not just Carlos Santana's masterpiece. It was his arrival. The moment everything he had absorbed, every influence, every lesson, every cultural thread, finally wove itself into something completely new. This was not rock, not jazz, not Latin. It was all of them. It was Santana. Black Magic Woman. Oye Como Va. Samba Pa Ti. These tracks proved fusion could be commercial without being compromised. Santana took Fleetwood Mac's blues and gave it Afro-Cuban percussion. He took Tito Puente's mambo and electrified it. He channeled Coltrane's spirituality through a Fender Stratocaster. And somehow, impossibly, it all worked. What made Abraxas revolutionary was its confidence. Santana did not apologize for the complexity, did not water down the rhythms, did not hide his heritage. He put conga drums next to distorted guitars and dared the world to call it anything but brilliant. And the world agreed. This album taught Santana what his influences had been whispering all along. That authenticity resonates, that you cannot fake your soul, that the most powerful music comes from honoring everything you are without compromise. Carlos Santana turned influences into miracles. These 7 albums taught him that music transcends borders, genres, and expectations. His guitar became a prayer, a celebration, a revolution. Subscribe. Share your life-changing albums below. The Spirit speaks through us all.